It's very easy for our brains to come up with excuses not to push ourselves to do things sometimes. And the way to justify that sometimes can be, well, it's a boundary for me. And that's what we have to get really real with ourselves. Is this a boundary? And is it really serving me? Hey there, welcome to Unboxing It, a podcast by Lara Wellman and me, Rowan Jeté-Knox. Each week we tackle societal ideas and expectations that can stop us from leading full and authentic lives. We're so glad you're joining us. Let's get started. Hey there, welcome to this episode of Unboxing It. My name is Rowan.
And I'm Lara.
And today, wow, we've got one that I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. I saw an article in Stylist Magazine. Now, we will, of course, post this article, but it is behind a paywall. I have Apple News and it came up on Apple News, but I love the name of it. It says, "Sorry, I can't come to your party. I've got boundaries."
Mm-hmm.
And after that, it says, "We proudly prioritize self care over commitments to others. But is an overzealous approach to boundaries only making us lonelier?" Stylist goes behind the lines. And it just goes from there. But I think that covers what we want to talk about today, which is we are both people who have helped other people figure out what healthy boundaries are and create those and hold them when needed. And there's another side to that. Like there isn't anything like too much of a good thing, maybe, or, is there too much of a good thing when it comes to boundaries? What do you think, Lara?
Well, I think sometimes part of it is boundaries aren't what we think they are, right? We might say, like, oh, this is a boundary, but really it's just you shutting down what is happening in life. I think there's a balance in figuring out what is a boundary. What is what you want your life to look like? What is what you want your life goals to be? And putting those together and understanding that none of them live alone in a silo. Like they have to be interconnected for it to work properly. We're not setting boundaries that are then going to mean nothing else in our life works. We need them to work together. And I think that's part of what's not always working for people. I mean, including myself.
I saw a young Gen Z influencer talk about this again this morning. And I was like, yes, this is absolutely what we need to be talking about because the young people are starting to talk about this. I think our generation was really good at teaching our kids and the younger people in general that we let ourselves be walked over too much. We people please too much as a general rule. We did not prioritize ourselves, our rest, our peace enough. And that you shouldn't do that because it's going to lead to burnout and resentment and all these other things. I am 100% in favor of figuring out what works for you, but it's been taken to an extreme and confounded with other things, mixed in with other things. And it is now harming friendships. It's now harming relationships. It is now preventing relationships even from getting started sometimes because people will say, these are my boundaries. My boundary is that if I don't feel like going out, I'm not going to go out. My boundary is if somebody doesn't meet these 15 qualities on a first date, I'm not going to have another date with them. Or somebody's friend will do something that hurts their feelings one time. And then all the other friends will be like, you need to break up with that friend. That's crossing your boundaries. You need to just walk away. And so there's no room for growth in that friendship. It just doesn't get another chance. And so I saw this Gen Z person talk about how lonely they had become because they had subscribed to this boundaries and myself above all philosophy at the expense of their social life, their romantic life. And I felt really bad for them. I'm glad they're figuring it out. They're still really young, right? So like a young person can figure this stuff out and go, okay, what changes do I need to make? But what exactly did we do? I feel as somebody who's really talked a lot about boundaries, I feel bad about that.
I think a lot of it that we really wanted everybody to know, whether it's our kids or each other or our parents, like we're telling everybody, you don't get to tell me how I need to live my life. That's where
Mm,
the beginning is, right? You don't get to tell me how to live my life. You don't get to tell me how to feel. You don't get to tell me who I can be friends with. Like it's a lot of that's enough. Stop trying to boss my life around. And I think that's true. I think we need more of that. We need to notice when things aren't what we want and what we've been told to want. And we need to not just say yes to everything because we don't want to rock the boat. We don't need to do things that we're not interested in just because that's a good career. Like, I think all of that is still true.
yeah.
But the side that becomes too much, the side that creates loneliness is if you don't like it, don't do it. And
Mhm.
I think that there are times where we need to do things that we don't like or that we don't feel like doing or that are uncomfortable. I think a lot of the growth that has helped me get to where I am in my life required me to get uncomfortable. I needed to say, I'm going to come out of my little bubble and do something that I'm not super comfortable with because it's going to help me grow into the next version of myself. But if I was like, I don't like that, I'm not doing it, every time I got uncomfortable, every time I was like, I don't like it, there's a lot of things I wouldn't have experienced.
Yeah, and I think that where that line is different for every person.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to see an osteopath for the first time last week, and I've been having this hip pain for a long time. And she's like, yeah, you have bursitis. And explained to me what the bursa is and how it gets inflamed and that it doesn't respond well to stretching. Bursas do not like to be stretched very much. And so I said, well, I do stretching though. I like to do yoga, and there's a lot of good reasons for me to stretch. She was like, absolutely, but don't do it if it hurts. Like, you don't lean into a deep stretch. If you feel this flaring up, you have to stop. You push it a little bit and then you stop. I think that's a really good analogy for things that make us uncomfortable. I can't speak for everybody. I'm like you though. If I did not push myself in those moments of discomfort, I would not grow as a person. I am a much better person because I have made myself uncomfortable. I have found myself uncomfortable and said, I'm going to do it anyway. Now, that does not mean something dangerous. It does not mean something that is going to harm me, right? And this is where nuance is very important. I think it's really easy in these discussions to forget nuance. And unfortunately, that is just a problem in general these days. You just have to look at the way our world is, and you can see that a lot of people are not living in nuance land. They're living way over here, they're living way over there, and it's very black and white, and there is no gray. That is hurting us, and it hurts us in discomfort too. It is such a wonderful thing to be able to tell our kids or the younger generations or our friends or whoever it might be, listen to your gut. If something's making you really uncomfortable, it's okay to say no. Yeah, absolutely it is. But like you were saying, there are life goals as well. And if my life goal, one of them is I don't want to be lonely. Let's say I'm a kid on campus and it's my first time on campus, and I am very uncomfortable with the idea of like going to the rec room and hanging out with people and meeting new people there. Like the idea just fills me with anxiety. But if my life goal is I want to make some friends and I want to have a good positive experience here, then stopping and going, well, that's my boundary. I'm uncomfortable. So I'm just going to stay in my dorm room is not going to serve me long term. It might make me feel better in the moment, but long term is going to make me lonelier. And that's what we're finding in a lot of these studies that are coming out on loneliness is that form of rigidity, social rigidity is deeply impacting people when it comes to feeling alone and disconnected in the world.
Yeah. And I think it's gotten worse since COVID, but I don't like going out very much. I used to be when I was in my 20s, I was going out all the time. I loved going out. And the older I got, the less I wanted to do it. And now, honestly, it becomes like this little dream I like to have about my little like hut in the middle of the woods where nobody ever talks to me again, right? Like there's just like moments where that doesn't that sound lovely? I know it wouldn't sound lovely to everybody, but to me, there are moments right now where I was like, just nobody ever talked to me again.
No, I get it. I get it.
And so I find it harder to go out. The older I get, the harder I find transitions. Like just the act of getting ready to go out and then going out is the hardest hurdle for me. And so if I gave into that, if I was just like, I don't like it, I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it, I'm just going to spend more time at home, I would be a lot lonelier. And I am actively making an effort to do it anyway, a lot of the time, right? Like I've been signing up to things. I've got my line dancing class tonight. Do I feel like going line dancing right now? Like, not even a tiny little bit. But am I going to be happy that I went? Yes. If I keep going to this thing and I hate it every time, I'm not going to keep going. But do I let just the amount of like, I don't really want to go mean don't do what you don't want to do, Lara, and then stop? No, it's a balance between figuring out what truly is uncomfortable. So I like your analogy with the stretching because if there's a pull, you're okay. If it hurts, something's wrong. And I think that that's one of the things that we can look for. Like, what is it like? It's like, ugh, ugh, I don't really like it. That's more of a pull. If you're like, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, that's pain.
Let's talk for a moment too about the idea of toxic relationships, because I think this term is getting thrown around a lot right now. Now, I believe that there are plenty of relationships that would be classified as toxic. I have certainly contributed to those relationships and experienced those relationships. And the only way for that relationship to stop hurting me was for it to end. Right. And I'm not just talking romantic relationships, I'm talking about friendships and
Yeah.
sometimes family relationships. But I think we've gone from you should put up with this person because they've been your best friend forever, or you should put up with this person because it's your mother, or it's your father, or it's your brother, or whoever. We've gone from, well, of course, you would never walk away because this is a loved one. So you just figure out ways to deal with it and try and make it work to the best of your ability to, you really don't need to be there anymore. You could just leave if you wanted to. And if it's making you unhappy, you should walk. And I think sometimes that is absolutely the case, especially and always if it is very abusive. Like there's no question an abusive relationship is an abusive relationship and it is harmful. And if there is no ability to work through that, especially if it is making it very dangerous for you, you should not be there. And I will say that to anyone, I'll scream it from the rooftops. If a relationship is chronically harming you, even if it doesn't qualify as abusive, and no matter what you do, it's not getting better. Yeah, sometimes, setting those boundaries or walking away entirely, that is the way to do things. But I have also seen situations where somebody says, yeah, I have a friend who just flakes out on me a lot. And that's just really toxic. It's really toxic that they don't show up on time. It's really toxic that they break plans at the last minute. And so I'm just not going to be their friend anymore. And I think if we do that, I know there's going to be people who are going to come at me and be like, well, you have to do that sometimes. Okay, that's cool. But I guess what I'm trying to say is at what point is it toxic versus at what point do we go, well, nobody's going to be perfect. And what I'm trying to say is I worry that if something isn't perfect and that is our reason for not pursuing it, we will, in fact, continue to be lonely. And that is heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, you first brought up this topic, or you mentioned it when we did the episode on being late. And I think that that's the perfect example with Some people being, I won't accept somebody being late. It's not respectful, shutting them down. Is it toxic? Like all of those kinds of things. That's one of those examples with, are you actually experiencing something terrible where somebody's being really awful to you and then you need to cut them out? Or is it something different and maybe we reconsider what's happening? And I think it is figuring out the nuance. It is figuring out like what is worth holding strong for and what isn't really that big of a deal. Again, knowing everybody's whatever that is, not big of a deal is different. But if we come back to that Stylist article, which I haven't read because it is behind a paywall for me, what reasons would there be to not go to a party because boundaries? And I think there are some valid ones, right? So if you're like, I have been out every night this week, I am feeling really, really worn out. I know people would like me to be there, but like I can't do it again. I'm tapped out. And I have decided in my life that when I feel like this, I need to say no to things. I think
Yeah.
that's a valid reason to not go to a party. But I imagine that's not the only reason people are using when they're saying I have boundaries.
Yeah, I can think of another good reason. Maybe if there was somebody there like an ex or an ex friend, or you knew somebody was going to be there and that was going to make the whole night just really awful. There are two ways to go about that. One is I'm going to step away from that and not go tonight. Maybe it's really fresh. Maybe you're just not mentally up to it, right? I mean, there's lots of reasons for that. And certainly, no judgment. And then the other thing might be, you know what? I don't want to have to avoid this person the rest of my life. So I'm going to push myself through that uncomfortableness, right? And just go anyway and do it. But also, it's okay to have some boundaries around what constitutes saying yes to a night out. I know for me, I have boundaries around social media use. I have a list and I know these are the reasons I'm going to be on social media, and anything else is not serving me and adds nothing to my life. And so I'm not going to do that. And that's because I've already played that game for years and years where I did those things and I learned that those things just exhaust me and stress me out. So because I've done that enough and I've known that like I'm not going to grow from this, if I just reply to troll comments, if I go seeking out drama, if I spend too much time online, if I'm seeking validation online, like those sorts of things just don't serve me. I've done them enough to know that there's no amount of growing or anything positive I'm going to get out of it. So I'm not going to do it. I think the same can be applied sometimes where it's like, if you have really bad knees, hiking's not going to be for you, probably. Right. So even if people that you like are going to go hiking, even if it's a great way to meet new people, maybe that's not your scene and that's okay. Or if there's a group of people that go to this thing that you're really interested in and you really don't vibe with them, like you just don't, no matter what, they're just really not your people, and you've tried that, I think it's okay to skip that one. Or you really like your friend, but you know that their group of friends that doesn't involve you, you just really don't like them at all. I think that's okay. Like it's okay to have some things. But I think what this article is trying to say is that it's very easy for our brains to come up with excuses not to push ourselves to do things sometimes. And the way to justify that sometimes can be, well, it's a boundary for me. And that's what we have to get really real with ourselves. Is this a boundary? And is it really serving me? Because a boundary is supposed to protect us. So not just in the short term, like, yeah, no, I just don't really feel like getting out of my pajamas. Okay, sometimes okay, that's all right. But if we're doing that a lot, like a lot, in the long term, people are inviting us out a lot less. And we're really starting to feel closed off from the world. Is that boundary, as we call it, is that really helping us? So that's where that nuance is, and it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah. We got the push and pull, right? Like we've got what makes us uncomfortable, what we don't want to do. I think a boundary generally is something that is pre-thought out, right? So it's not like in the moment, I don't want to do something, somebody pushes me and I'm like, this is a boundary I'm putting up. Like,
Yeah.
maybe, but most of the time it's something that you've thought about and you're like, this is a really big deal in my life. And so I need to create this boundary. And I do think it gets overused as a result. And I do think that we need to do a little bit of reflection on what we want. So not only is it, where I was saying we need to get a bit uncomfortable, but we need to be willing to get uncomfortable to grow. But what do you want out of life? If you're looking to have a great group of friends, is the boundary never going out? Or is it like I need to look in different places because the people I'm friends with are not really the ones I like? Again, that's not a boundary. That's like, turns out you don't like the people you know and you need to do something different to find
Right.
people you do like. Like, that's not a boundary, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
So, how do we decide? I mean, some of it is it's part of this feeling of what do I want? Taking time to think about it. So, as coaches, I think that's a lot of what we're actually doing. People don't come to me, generally speaking, with the goal of setting boundaries. The goal is to feel better about something. The goal is to, whether it's business or life, feel better about how things are going and to look through what it is that they want to achieve. Are they looking for more ease? Are they looking for more connection? Are they looking to make more money? Whatever it is that they're doing, when you have a sense of where you're trying to go, then you can start to figure out what you need to do, and you can start to figure out what you don't want to do to get there and what your rules and guidelines are going to be to get there. And that's where I think this comes in, right? It's not just about don't let people tell you what to do. It's about being really intentional with your life. And I think that that's one of the best words that covers so many things when I talk to people is be intentional. Don't let life happen to you. Don't let the world tell you how you need to live life, but be intentional about what you want and you don't want. And then start to work on figuring out what you need to do to get there.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people are saying how lonely they are. And that's why all these studies are coming up, right? Because there is a lot of talk about how we are more connected than we ever have been, in the sense that I can text you, Lara, 4.5 hours away, and you can text me back, and we can have these podcasts and go online. And like, there's all these different ways where we can talk to people, but we're not necessarily engaging in meaningful ways out in the world. I also think that one of the things I'd really like to remind people is nobody's perfect. So,
What?
yeah, I know. Even me, even me, honestly, especially me. The amount of people when I had my health scare a few weeks ago, gosh, it hasn't even been a few weeks, but it's been like two, I think, since I found out I don't, in fact, have cancer, which is fantastic. But I was really shut down for a good month there. And people would text me or email me, and I was dropping balls everywhere. I was hardly able to respond to anyone. It took all of my energy just to get through a day while I was waiting to find out just how my life was going to go. And I'm so glad that nobody got upset with me because I know that that could have come across in various ways to people. Rowan doesn't care about me. Rowan's being disrespectful. Rowan doesn't want to do anything. Rowan has moved on with his life because I didn't tell a lot of people what was going on. I didn't want to have to explain the unknown to everybody. I wanted to wait for answers and then figure out what to do from there. And if anybody got upset with me who cares about me, nobody showed it. And I'm so grateful. And that's a lesson that I'm taking along with me into the future. I mean, I kind of knew that already. I've always given people a lot of grace when it comes to not getting back to me about something or ghosting me for a while or whatever, because I've realized that we all have lives and that everybody's life is complex in its own way and stressful in its own way. And if people expected perfection from me, if one of their boundaries that they said, boundaries in air quotes perhaps, or boundaries, real boundaries, and that's entirely up to individuals, but if one of theirs was people need to get back to me within 24 hours, or whatever it might be, I would have lost a lot of friends, you know, and not because I was trying to be toxic, right? Or trying to be disrespectful, however you want to phrase that, but really just because I was struggling so, so hard. So just remember when we are reading this onslaught of messaging around your friends to treat you this way, and people who care about you will always treat you this way. There is nuance in that too. And yeah, nobody should treat you terribly. That's unacceptable. People should not be going out of their way to hurt other people. And obviously, we do have to set some boundaries to protect ourselves. But I have seen a lot of articles like that where it's like, does your friend take forever to get back to you? Are they really a friend? You know, that sort
Mhm.
of thing. And it doesn't mean they don't care about you. It usually doesn't mean that. It usually means that they're going through something. And instead of getting upset with them, it might be good to say, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Are you doing okay? I'm worried about you.
Yeah. I think another way to talk about boundaries in this conversation is what is a non negotiable for you. And I think that there
Mm.
are a few things that are non negotiable for me. I can't make everything non negotiable. Like, if I said it's non negotiable about everything to people, like, first of all, nobody would want to be friends with me because that sucks.
Yep.
But also, that doesn't give me wiggle room. It doesn't give me the ability to figure out what's going on. And I think there should be some things that are really important to you and that you've figured out what those are, and they are non negotiable. And sometimes we just need to go with the flow. Sometimes there are things that we don't love that we do, as long as it doesn't hurt. Like, I don't want anybody thinking I'm suggesting go be miserable because that's how you grow. No, right? Like, we're not talking about being miserable. We're talking about the little things that, does that matter as much as you're saying it does? Or will letting some of this kind of slide, letting some of this run its course is going to help you get to the next step of what you want in life. But then you need to know where you're trying to go, right? Like, that's part of goal setting. As a business coach, that part of my life as a business owner and helping other businesses figure out their goals, it's not something people do well because people set goals that are really, in my opinion, not goals. They're just like actions they want to do. To me, a goal is about thinking about what is meaningful to you. What is like the overall meaningful outcome that you want? And I think we should be doing that, business or no business, to figure out what we are trying to achieve in our lives.
When I'm setting a boundary, I like to ask myself why I'm setting it because the answer will tell me whether or not I should look at that further.
Mhm.
So, if, for example, my boundary is I will not tolerate people yelling at me. I will not engage in that conversation. If they start to yell, I will walk away. Well, that's directly related to the trauma that I've experienced in my own life and a massive feeling of unsafety, like just not feeling safe. Is unsafety a word? It's a word now.
Why not?
Sure, sure. But like a feeling of not being safe and a feeling of the conversation devolving to a point where we can't have a conversation at all because tempers are too flared. And so that's when I will end that conversation and resume it, possibly depending on what kind of relationship it is. If it's a stranger encounter or if it's somebody that I'm in a relationship with, I will come back to that at a later time when we are more level headed. But if my boundary is something like, again, I'll go back to this example because I used it before. If my friend doesn't text me back within 24 hours, they're not my friend. What is that about? And maybe somebody has a really good reason and that's important to them and that is non negotiable. And I'm not going to tell you what should or shouldn't be. For me, if that were my thing, it would be directly related to my fear of abandonment because I have been abandoned before in that sense. I've had people just up and leave. You know, my own father left when I was very young and I never got to know him. And this sort of sets the stage for feeling unwanted. So, at that point, if I know that that's actually what's going on, then I'm making what's happening inside me about someone else. And so maybe at that point, two things. One, I have a conversation with people I love and say, hey, by the way, if you can get back to me more quickly, That's fantastic because it helps me to know because I have a certain attachment style or whatever that I'm, going to feel safer and it's going to help us in our relationship. So great. But also, it allows me to do a bit of work on me and go, what's actually going on is I don't want to feel alone and I don't want to feel like somebody doesn't care about me. Maybe there's some other ways that I can nurture myself and work on myself. And so it really is that why component is so important when it comes to those boundaries for me. It is everything. If it is about safety, then that boundary is non-negotiable. Always, 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 always. If it is not about safety, that boundary may not need to be as rigid as it is.
Yeah. We first brought this topic up during the episode about lateness, and I happen to have today, the day that we're recording this, just listened to that episode. So it's very fresh for me. But one of the things that came up was this whole it's not actually about you. So when somebody's late, it's not really that they're trying to just be disrespectful to you. There's times where it's just not about you. There's something else going on. And I think this is what we're saying, right? Not everything that somebody does that sucks is disrespectful. It's not about you.
Yeah.
It might suck, but it's not necessarily specifically them trying to do something to you or not caring about you. And starting to think about that and knowing the distinctions can really help.
These are all things that I wish I had known in my 20s, especially when I burned so many bridges. And I did it because, at the time when I ended some friendships, I really thought that it was all them, right? They were doing this. And I went to drug and alcohol rehab when I was 14. And so I grew up quite literally in self help culture, which is not a bad thing. I learned a lot about myself, but I think I also went to the extreme of this victim mentality where when people did things, I did make it about me. So if somebody didn't get back to me, and when I said that about that fear of abandonment, like I don't have that issue now, but I did. And texting wasn't really a thing back then. It wasn't a
Mhm.
thing that I engaged in anyway. It happened, but it wasn't very common yet. But just people not calling me or somebody forgetting my birthday, I remember just getting so hurt by that and making it all about me. And I don't think my expectations were necessarily fair a lot of the time. Sometimes I did have a friendship or some kind of relationship that really wasn't healthy. And it wasn't healthy in part because of me, but a lot of it was their behaviors. And I had to let those go. But there were other times where I think that if I could go back and have a conversation with my younger self, I'd be like, hey, give a little more grace because this person is figuring their shit out too. You are, and they are. And so expecting perfection from somebody else when you yourself are not a perfect person, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And it's unfair.
Yeah, for sure. I think that ultimately, what I'm taking from this conversation, or what I'm hoping people take, is that we need to remember that life is always changing, that we need to think about what works for us. We don't need to get stuck in ruts. We don't need to get stuck in, I said this once, so I have to stick to it for the rest of my life. That we remember that not everything that happens is about us or that people mean badly when they do things. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And so it's just about taking the time to say, if I'm not happy, is there anything I can do to change? Not, why does everybody suck and my life keep continuing to suck? But like, what can I do to position myself in a way that I can go towards a goal I really want in a way that's going to work for me?
The world right now is a very dark place for a lot of people.
Mhm.
And I know I'm struggling with it. And I'm one of the more positive people I know. Every day I have to remind myself, like, okay, you can get out of bed and find these moments of joy and try and bring these moments of joy to other people. And I'm largely successful in that. But with a world this difficult already, it is really important not to make it harder on ourselves and not to allow that darkness to creep in too much, not allow that loneliness and the heaviness of what's going on keep us from that forward momentum, keep us from going out and meeting new people, keeping us from trying new things. I know from firsthand experience, I am a trans man in 2025, a visible trans man in 2025. I know how hard it is to just leave the house sometimes. But if I just stayed home all the time because this was my safe place, I wouldn't get all the positive experiences. I wouldn't have met all the people that I meet. I wouldn't be able to experience the joy. Like just walking down the street yesterday, my partner and I went to a farmer's market and I said, "Stop. Look at these roses right here in somebody's yard, like right by the sidewalk. I bet they smell beautiful." And we literally, two trans people, stopped and smelled the roses. And
Mhm.
it was worth every second we took to do that. So I just don't want to see anybody stop living because it all feels like too much. So push yourselves a little bit if you can. And when you can't, that's okay too. Cocoon, cocoon. And have grace for the people in your lives because they're all going through it in their own ways, whether they're telling you or not. Everybody's going through stuff right now. So if we could all just remember to be kind to ourselves and to each other, it would make such a big difference. Wow, I feel like a youth pastor right now. That's me, your trans guy youth pastor. But seriously, just remember these are the times when we grow in adversity. So, yeah, push yourself a little bit.
And if you are feeling lonely, think about the places that do feel good and think about how you can make sure you go there and you take the time, even when you're uncomfortable, to move forward there. And come to the comments and tell us what it is that you may be struggling with or what it is that has worked for you, because we want to hear.
And what is the name of my church if I'm a youth pastor? Like, feel free to give me one because I I can't come up with one off the top of my head.
Let's hear it.
Thanks for joining us today. Thank you for listening to Unboxing It. We're so glad you did. If you like what you heard and you want to help us keep making episodes, please leave us a rating wherever you heard this one. You can also subscribe to the Unboxing It Substack to get access to all of the latest news and some special bonus content. And hey, truly, don't forget to find some moments of joy today. You deserve them. Take care out there, and we'll see you next time.